for joining us today. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. We have a lot coming up today, so let's get started by taking a look at the day's highlights. More and more countries around the world are slashing their corporate tax rates with hopes of boosting business competitiveness. We sit down with an expert to talk about what Korea can do to save its struggling local companies. Local governments have been stepping up efforts to help the country's youth as they fight to land jobs, but the central government is calling their efforts too much. But first, Korea's central bank will hold its monthly monetary policy meeting tomorrow, and market analysts widely expect no change in the key interest rate. They say the economy is caught up in the middle of a number of issues stemming from in and outside of Korea. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
While the U.S. Federal Reserve is gearing up for its first rate rise in almost a decade next week, the European Central Bank took the opposite direction, laying out a new set of stimulus measures earlier this month. And that divergence is forecast to continue, with the ECB saying it's ready to ease its policy further if necessary.
Deflation pressure will persist in the meantime due to the oil price down. So most of market participants forecast that there will be some stimulus package in around over 2016.
But the trend of advanced nations focusing heavily on performance at home is prompting concerns that it will stir up greater instability in the global financial markets, resulting in massive capital outflows from emerging economies. While Korea is no exception when it comes to facing such external risks, it's also suffering from slowing exports due to lackluster global demand, mainly from China. Citing such uncertainties, Korea Development Institute slashed its growth outlook for this year to 2.6%, down almost half a percentage point from its earlier forecast. Unpredictability also remains on the domestic front, with household debt climbing rapidly, although the economy posted better than expected growth in the third quarter this year. Under such circumstances, many consider it would be difficult for the Bank of Korea to make any changes in its monetary policy in this month's meeting on Thursday.
Well, I still think like a BOK will hold it. It's not the time to hike it, as I said, but it's not the time to cut either, because the economy is on the gradual recovery path. So.
Given that experts add that most attention is focused on the governor's remarks on the lingering uncertainties at home and abroad, rather than any change in the key rate itself. Hwang Ji-hye, Business Daily.
Korea's free trade agreement with its biggest trade partner, China, is set to go into effect on December 20th. Seoul's trade ministry said the two sides agreed on this date at a meeting in Beijing on Wednesday to speed up the implementation and maximize bilateral benefits. According to the ministry, exporters are forecast to see swift results, given 2 rounds of tariff cuts are due in a short period of time, one this month and the other on January 1st. On the same day, in a separate meeting in Wellington, Korea and New Zealand agreed to roll out their FTA on the 20th as well. Now, this comes after 9 rounds of negotiations since 2009. This year, it's estimated that roughly 99 global companies around the world have gone bankrupt, the highest in number since the global financial crisis in 2008. So governments are stepping up efforts to save ailing companies, with one way of doing that being corporate taxes. Let's find out what this is all about.
In the world of corporate tax rates, Ireland's 12.5% was already one of the lowest in Europe. But back in October, the country announced an even lower rate for intellectual property research, allowing profits related to patents and software copyrights to be taxed at a mere 6.25%. And the Irish are not the only ones slashing their corporate tax rates. India announced this year will cut rates by 5 percentage points over the next 4 years, while Japan is also set to slash its corporate tax to 29.97% in the 2016 fiscal year. More than 30 countries around the world have trimmed corporate tax rates over the past 5 years with hopes of spurring investment and growth amid the slowing global economy. And Korea is no exception. A large number of the country's company credit ratings were downgraded this year, nearing the worst level seen since 1998 as they suffered from limp demand at home and abroad. Will a change in the country's corporate tax rate help businesses enhance their competitiveness? We'll get a closer look.
And to tell us more about this, Kim Il-sun, director of the Society for National Infrastructure at Hanyang University, joins us in the studio today. Welcome to the program.
Pleasure.
So Korean companies are performing rather poorly this year due to falling exports and also weak demand both at home and abroad. But of course, Korea is not the only one struggling with this.
Sure.
What's the situation like with other companies around the world right now?
Sure, the corporations around the world are going through one of the toughest times ever. It is a global phenomenon, not just in Korea, but around the world. You know, during the global financial crisis back in the 2008 and 9, there were about 222 global corporations going bankrupt. Now in 2015, we see 99 global corporations going really bad. And that's the biggest since the 2009. So out of the 99 corporations going bankrupt, we see about 62 from United States, 19 from emerging markets, and 13 from Europe. The biggest hit was on the energy and natural gas corporations because the substantial price drop in crude oil and natural resources. And many companies losing, as much as 50% in their net profit. For example, in Japan, the major steel companies, due to the Chinese steel companies doing a lot of exports, they're losing a substantial profit. It's a big global concern.
And of course, during this tough times, many countries around the world are actually trying to help growth, to help these ailing businesses and also spur growth by cutting corporate tax rates.
Of course.
Now, how is this expected to help businesses? And is this the way to, sustainable growth?
Well, simply put, the lower corporate taxes would mean more cash for the corporations. You got to see the intrinsic meaning of the corporate tax, what it is like. It's like government taking away the part of the investment dollar the corporations would reserve to make the investment. And the lower corporate tax for many governments is a symbol of the company-friendly policy. So what they do, they give out tax breaks for the corporations to boost investment and boost creating more jobs when the economy is going down. And when the economy is going south, as a matter of fact, many corporations, when they are global, they seek to find possibly to relocate their major HQ operations to other countries, possibly to save substantial amount in tax dollars.
All right, and like we heard in the report, it almost seems like it's a race to the bottom of corporate tax rates. Can you give us some examples?
Sure, we call this tax shopping from the perspective of the corporations. Major global corporations are comparing corporate taxes of different major countries to reduce a substantial amount in taxes. For example, Ireland, known for the lowest corporate tax rate of 12.5%, is even saying that they will further cut down to 6.25%.
Wow, almost half.
Yes, it is unheard of for the IT companies. So it's a total shock for many other countries who are in competition to host global corporations, global investment against Ireland's calling. Now, the U.S. collects 35% compared to UK at 20%. So major U.S. corporations are either considering or actually moving to UK for a substantial saving. For example, Pfizer, the second biggest global pharmaceutical company, they have declared that they'll move their operations to Ireland to get this big saving. Now, Obama called that Pfizer's decision unpatriotic. But on the other hand, Jeb Bush and Donald Trump, they declared that they'll cut down the corporate tax rate to 20% and 15% if they were elected. So the major war on tax cutting, tax slashing to attract global investment, global cooperation is everywhere, not just in Korea, Japan, but in the West and East, you find it everywhere.
Well, let's now turn our eyes to Korea. Korea has been actually trying to do the same to cut corporate tax rates to, upgrade industrial and global competitiveness. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Lower the corporate taxes, it is merrier for the global investments and global corporations. Back in the 80s, when you look at the United States case, Reagan pursued the Reaganomics. It's a policy of simply lower taxes, which has been proven to substantially boost the U.S. economy at the time compared to the time before that. So it was a huge success. And Korea is going through a population aging these days. So what we expect in the next decades is less of the household savings, but more reliance on foreign direct investment. So Korea needs to look at how to attract foreign investment. When you look at Korea's corporate tax rate, it is sixth highest among the 32 OECD countries. So from the perspective of the global corporations, Korea's corporate tax rate policy is not that attractive in the world. But on the other hand, there is also a voice by the opposition political parties saying that Korea's actual tax rate, which is the actual tax paid after deduction, is about only 16.8%. Compared to other nations, it is not that high, they claim. So depending upon who win the debate on these policy issues, Korea's tax rate may go up or down. It'll be very interesting to wait and see.
Right, like you just said, others are actually opposing the cuts, saying that Korea has actually relatively low taxes for corporations, and further cuts could actually lead to a deterioration of fiscal soundness. Do you agree with that?
Well, let's look at the facts and numbers. When the corporate tax rate is cut by 1% in Korea, that means Korean government would lose about $1 billion in US dollar in revenue, annual revenue. But the question is, you have to ask, would that tax cut of $1 billion would actually bring about the same effect in boosting the economy? If the answer is yes or no, there goes the policy direction. Now, the opposing argument is that small and medium-sized enterprises would need more governmental support than the big corporations need a tax cut.
Right.
So the argument is that we should collect more taxes and reserve more revenue, and then give those revenue to those small, medium-sized companies who need more investment to boost the national economy. Which one is the right policy? Well, the international trend is to slash the corporate tax rates. Would it work for Korea as well? It'll be very interesting to watch.
All right, so we'll have to keep an eye on this ongoing debate on this corporate tax rate.
Sure thing.
Thank you so much for coming in today.
You're welcome.
Now, you'll remember the Youth Hope Fund started by President Park Geun-hye to help struggling youth unable to find proper work. Some local governments are also rolling up their sleeves to tackle youth unemployment, but some are strongly opposing such efforts. We find out why with our Eunice Kim.
Some strong words on Seoul City's bold plans to support struggling low-income young Koreans.
It's akin to opium that'll destroy the heavy minds of our youth.
It's clearly populist welfare. Will block the reckless use of funds.
The fear? Should such measures spread to surrounding local governments and fail, that could add up to a great burden for the central government. Some have gone so far as saying it's welfare meant to buy votes in next year's elections. So then, what is the plan? In its trial to run in the second half of next year, Seoul City plans to disperse an activity allowance to 3,000 pre-selected youths from low-income households, that is, those making less than 60% of median pay. The monthly stipend of $430 for 6 months is meant to give some breathing space to the most desolate, who are too busy making ends meet to pursue substantial careers or training.
I can't help but wonder if the central government and the ruling party really understand the despair of these young people, whether there's a real will to build a bridge for them.
Seoul City argues the program is not excessive and in line with the central government's drive to employ Korea's young people. It comes months after similar plans were drafted by other local governments. Nearby Seongnam City wants to distribute a so-called youth dividend to those who have lived in their city for 3 or more years, starting with 24-year-olds. Gyeonggi-do Province had its so-called bank book program greenlit by the central government to extend a 100,000 won monthly stipend to 500 young workers. But controversy spawned when Seoul City presented its plan, and as criticisms are projected at Mayor Park Won-soon, the issue is decidedly taking a political turn.
Such cash-based welfare for youth is still very unfamiliar to us, although we can find precedents in countries like France or Germany, but it can work if constructed meticulously to nurture hireability.
Whether the contentious issue can rise above politics as usual, only time will tell. For now, the outlook is pessimistic, as the central government has warned it could cut its budgetary support if Seoul City pushes forward. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
A new report is out that shows the average annual salary of the Korean wage earner in 2014 fell noticeably short of $30,000. That figure came in at 32.4 million won, which is about $27,500. The Federation of Korean Industries released this data on Wednesday after analyzing statistics collected by the Labor Ministry on some 14 million people. Now, those who took home $54,000 or more constituted the top 10% of Korea's employees. And another interesting fact to note was the average pay for regular workers at a conglomerate, which was about $53,000, double that of their counterparts at smaller firms. And that does it for today. But we'll be back tomorrow at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. So don't forget to check back with us then. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.